Or disagreeable. I had a juror on After Dark last night say, I have two sisters, and we can't agree on anything.
And you also interviewed a woman, which actually knocked my socks off when I was sitting right in this chair listening to that, and the woman said, because they've been in the courtroom, she said during the closing, at least a couple of the jurors, remember there's 6 females, were crying. Now, others appeared stone-faced. What does that tell you? Could there be a division with these 6 women? And remember, in a way, 6 can achieve a consensus faster than 12, just statistically. I mean, if somebody was doing a game theory, you might say 6 people could reach a consensus faster. But there might be a way in which they also might divide up more faster and with more conviction.
Let's bring in our team, because look at those numbers, folks. 5 non-Hispanic white, 5 mothers, 4 connected to weapons. You see the other issues there that people are talking about. I want to bring back in Jason Johnson, Esther Panich, also Janet Johnson, Kirby Clemens. And Jason Johnson, let me start with you. 5 mothers, okay, on this jury. Which side do you think did the better job of speaking to the mothers, if in fact that's something that could end up determining the outcome of this case? Their background as mothers.
Well, I actually think that the prosecution spoke to mothers much better, but let's be perfectly candid. If demographics are destiny, the state pretty much had no chance. You've got 5 Southern white women making a determination here. And while race is something that couldn't be openly said throughout most of this case in terms of racial profiling, that's a pretty high bar, because a lot of what's being argued here has to do with cultural nuances and understanding, trying to get into the mind of a 17-year-old black boy who's walking home, trying to get into the mind of George Zimmerman. And I think that plays a role.
Jason, I want to jump in on you. Jason, I want to jump in on you because you're bringing up an issue that a lot of people have been polarized about. I see this every day on my Twitter. You're mentioning this idea that they have an uphill battle because you have predominantly white women on the jury. Do you think, though, that they could look at this and say, yes, he's a 17-year-old child or kid as opposed to a 17-year-old black child, and can try to connect with the state's theory? Or do you think it's more of a race issue?
And to jump in, I thought one of the most effective points that the prosecution made was reverse the order.
Exactly.
And what if Trayvon Martin had been in a truck carrying heat, carrying a weapon, following George Zimmerman? What would your verdict be then? And I thought that was one of the best points, Jason.
It was a brilliant point. And like I said, you know, that was essentially the Matthew McConaughey argument from an End of the Time to Kill. You know, imagine that, you know, it's reverse the races, and how would you look at this situation? Look, it's going to be difficult. Race is a reality. It is lived by all Americans. You cannot say that Trayvon Martin was a boy and not a black boy. And so whatever arguments and whatever pre-existing prejudices that people have come into play. That's one of the reasons why I always thought it was very strange that the prosecution wanted to argue about racial profiling. If the prosecution wanted to say, can you believe George Zimmerman looks at a young black man and gets nervous? Isn't that terrible? I'm sorry, but if they made that argument, there's women on that jury who are saying, I feel the same way. So, you know, they were always hamstrung by having to dance around race. I think the defense did a much better job because it did a lot of racial dog whistling.
Well,
you know, and I think there are a lot of, and he brings up a good point, a lot of people I have spoken to have said it's the unspoken word in this case. Everybody's going back and forth trying to avoid race, but there are a lot of people who support one side or another who say race is in this case, and you can't take it out of this case.
Right. Well, and you talk about the gender
and Mark O'Mara said you got to take that away.
If you talk about the gender issue, there was also a very crucial defense witness, a woman who got up and took the stand and said she was holding her infant child and a scissor when her apartment was